Welcome to the Soul Path Sessions podcast with Deborah Meints-Pierson and Brenda Littleton. Brenda is an educator and counselor rooted in Jungian and eco-psychology. She helps her clients understand the importance of the mind, body, spirit, and earth relationship for healing. Deborah is a licensed psychotherapist and has been trained in traditional and sacred psychology, exploring from the ground up what makes our human experience meaningful, wholesome, and enlightening. Deborah and Brenda invite you to accompany them on a soul path journey as they explore the possibilities of living a more soulful life as therapists, seekers, and lovers of fate.
Welcome to Soul Path Sessions. I'm Deborah Meints-Pierson, and I'm here with Brenda Littleton today, and we're going to talk about repair and return. This is a topic that Brenda brought to my attention in a most interesting way, and I want her to give her room today to really expand what she means. And what was interesting to me, Brenda, about this topic was the heat you brought to it. Because
the heat?
You brought some heat. We were out hiking in the Indian Canyons, at Tahquitz Falls a few weeks ago, and this mild-mannered reporter called Brenda says, I just hate the word healing. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I've never heard anyone with that put those two things. Like, I really despise this word healing. And it got me curious because I knew that you'd really peeled something apart. And I'm just really curious what your distinction is and why this got your ire and what you really want to focus on for yourself and maybe for our listeners.
Thank you. Well, it's not so much that I have a problem with the process of healing or people healing as it is, a long time ago, about 20 years, I started to work with trauma and what can I do as a practitioner to help people through their pain. And the idea of wound, of trauma, of healing was not part of the vernacular, the collective consciousness. Not many people were talking about my wound, my childhood wound. It was, the whole idea was not topical. And it wasn't comfortable. But now, everywhere I turn, every podcast I listen to, or magazine article, or even there was an article in the AAA magazine is about spots to go to heal. Mm-hmm. So it just becomes the sense of a mashup. The idea of everyone's, how are you healing today? What are you doing for your healing path?
And feels trendy.
Trendy, yeah. Thank you. Without a lot of sustenance, it becomes more of a topic as opposed to a practice. And so I was involved in a group with Sophie Strand, who is just an amazing young woman who is bringing to the forefront animistic properties and philosophies that non-human entities, non-human life is part of our biome, and that we are all interrelated. And while these concepts are part of our mainstream, she's doing a very specific job in allowing this conversation to be named in different ways and in ways that are topical. And I applaud her for that. And the idea that one of the takeaway ideas that I left from the program was dealing with we were looking at mycelium and the interconnectedness of mycelium and how under the ground there's this frequency, this network of communication that moves and surfaces, and that how we as humans are also all part of our above ground interconnected communication. And I woke up with the notion of, I downloaded this idea, instead of saying myself as is spelled by SELF, myself, that on a molecular level, we are healing ourselves, we are repairing ourselves, we are moving forward with unconsciously of ourselves, dividing and redoing. Like, we have new hair, we have new eyes, we have new skin. We're constantly repairing and regenerating.
Oh, there's your turnaround.
Yeah, so it's a sense of regeneration, and without being conscious of it. Now we can make it, we can make it conscious, but I was working with the notion of, instead of myself, SELF, that we function, and just give some space to the idea of myself, CELF.
Love it.
And what do cells do?
Yeah.
They repair, they regenerate. And when I brought it to my clients, the idea of, if I gave you a year off of healing, of working your practice of healing, and I'm going to ask you to be conscious of repairing, maybe repairing a sense of emotional habits or compensations. If I was to ask you to repair your relationship with your daughter, or repair the monkey chatter in your brain about self-negative talk, if I was to ask you to be more cellular and be aware of how your body is supporting and is a container for these emotional, psychological, and spiritual work, and that we align ourselves more with the cellular function and communicate with ourselves this way, how would that feel? Everyone said that they had a sense of burden released.
Yeah.
That the practice of healing also came with the sense of judgment, that they didn't do something right, or that they stayed away from their diet, or they didn't do their meditation or their yoga or their exercise, and that it was kind of a double-edged sword, that they were one step forward, two steps back type of thing. And with the notion of repair, as opposed to the whole premise of I'm working my practice to heal, it was lighter, more doable, smaller chunks. They could track their progress, that any activity that they participated in to assist in their body repairing gave them great spirit. They felt in compliance with themselves, and there was a larger sense of satisfaction. So while the notion of, so there's twofold. One is I get kind of irritated by just having something very sacred becoming a trend.
I hear you. Yeah, I didn't get that you threw out the whole word. It was just the way it was being modified. It wasn't integral enough. It didn't include all the moving parts. It was hyper fixated and focused, and maybe even doing people harm.
Yeah.
Like if everybody says, I have a wound of trauma and I have to avoid, and I'm limiting, I see that as a very negative trend, and I've watched it in my own practice where people will say, so-and-so's narcissistic. That's also trending. Everybody's narcissistic. Yeah. That's a word. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but to a certain extent we all are. And my wound, my woundology, my study of my wound is leading me into deep, dark depths of depression and despair and all the D words. Yeah. And so as a trauma specialist, I find that I join you in that, because when I was trained in EMDR, for instance, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, they talk a lot about resources. You can't do trauma work. You can't do the bilateral stimulation of a person's eyes or their body in order to help them process through, like, let's say, rape or the murder or some horrible thing. Without helping them access their strengths. Yeah. So you always begin with, what do you already know? No. What already helps you? Can you visualize it? Like the work that, like you were talking about the cell, like we're not even, like, it's pre-conscious. I'm talking to you right now. I'm digesting my food. My blood is circulating. Lymphatic cells are eating up stuff that I don't want in my blood. So I'm a semi-permeable self. CELF. Yeah. And in the same way, mentally, when I'm having thoughts, if I'm in a trauma block, one of my awarenesses is when someone's in a trauma block, we get them to move their eyes around, brain spotting, getting them to move their eyes to a place where they're not locked, and they can access their breath. They can access what heals them. The idea that we cannot access that it's not inside, which is something you brought up last semester in our soul path sessions, that within us is a universe of knowledge. And if we as healers don't access, we say, I hold this magic ticket to you and it'll cost you all this money, and then when I tell you you're well, you can go, that's sick. My job as a healer is to access your inner resources, the things you know, and make them conscious to you, so that when we do the memory work or the retrieval, you can rest there. Rest and repair.
Rest and repair and return.
Beautiful. I love that.
I did a session with Matt Licata, who is a wonderful depth psychologist, psychotherapist, and he has a program in just holding space for us to acknowledge this place of frozen entities. Like when we have all of these forgotten parts of ourselves and this implicit memory, and they're being very, and I call them being very polite. They're waiting off in the corner pocket, waiting for that opportunity to reemerge, and yet they're always on the quest to return home. And part of the work that Licata is providing is a sense of disengaging with the act of moving forward and being in that well of where we can be comfortable, we become comfortable with all of those parts that are not repaired, that all of those parts that we would traditionally want to heal. But the idea is that we're not judging them, that we accept them as they are, and that we create a sense of safety, and that the first step of working toward homeostasis is safety. And so for me, the idea, and this obviously speaks to my own inner work, instead of healing, I want to repair. I'm also in this place in my life where I'm repairing everything, whether it's my car, my house, my body, my teeth, my hair, all of it, and working with the cells, and so that in that place of, as you're saying, understanding what a person's resources are, if we actually give notice to all of the magic and the sacredness that's going on in our bodies, every single breath, it's amazing. I mean, I did a yoga practice with a lady, my practitioner. She's moved from Joshua Tree down to Mexico, and even on Zoom, it was palatable. That if in exhaling, going all the way down to being depleted, completely empty, and then staying there even a moment further and being at peace with that, and then inhaling and starting from the sense of, wow, that's a beautiful place to be.
It's so simple.
It's very simple. And if we can start there, the sense of emptiness, the sense of complete exhalation, detoxing it out. So our cells are, I call it the low tide. It's being extracted. And then we bring it up and we build. So if we are starting from the most smallest perceptible, natural, automatic.
Free.
Free. and counting those senses of, I am repairing, and accentuate that and amplify it. I'm a big proponent of amplification. I was lucky to study with James Hillman for 3 years, where one of his opening lines of his very first lectures at Pacifica was, we've had psychotherapy for over 100 years and we're still fucked up.
Same patient too.
Yeah. That's a lot of repair there.
Well, it's true. I'm old enough in my practice to see that every generation that comes through is beginning with where they are. And I've had to realize, there's stages of evolution as well as trends. When a person comes in, I'm not quite as caustic as James Hillman. I really see psychotherapy as being wonderful because it's a big category. I mean, many of my clients, their lives are better, and I'm enriched for knowing them, and they've gone on to do wonderful things. I think where it's become, where therapy has taken a turn, and I'm very grateful to see that. It's become more somatic. It's become more inclusive.
Embodied.
Yes, and the studies that were done on the Buddhist monks, the brain studies, where they showed that what you're talking about, meditation, Robert, what's her name? Ullman?
Johnson?
No. What's her name? Uma Thurman. Robert Thurman studies. Took me a while. I had to go back through the actress to find it. Thurman,
click,
yeah, Robert
click.
Thurman.
Those files came up.
Robert Thurman basically put electroencephalographs on monks who were meditating, and he found that the left parietal region of the brain was much more lit up. He found that their oxygen levels were much better, and they reported peace. So what's happened is that's gotten tied into the work of John Kabat-Zinn and Joan Boracinko and others who practice the more expanded view of healing. And we now know in our field, in psyche therapy, which means soul, our very first episode, that we must include in the conversation what truly heals. And what Robert Thurman's studies showed is if you meditate or you breathe and you do mindful practices, you're going to have a calmer system. Your body knows how to self-regulate, just like Mr. Rogers taught. Self-regulation through kindness to oneself.
Porges talks about that in the polyvagal.
Yes, yeah. Polyvagal, so many conversations.
And I used to teach, when I would have my polyvagal symposiums and the idea of mindfulness and breathing. And again, though, it's the molecular level. It's the cell. Mm-hmm. And so I want to amplify from the smallest part of our function of life and amplify it up. And so I'm walking around when I'm choosing food, it's like, okay, I'm going to repair my inflammation.
Yes.
Because I have a lot of inflammation due to injuries. And so it portions it out for me. I'm able to say, okay, in this little part of my life, I'm going to do this little packet. And then I go into my yoga practice or my meditation practice and then my physical, and then my intellect, and my creative, and then my spiritual, and
you're tapping into your inner intelligence, and that's something I think that we want to. Psyche wants to reconnect to the human life we're living. I love this because you were my inspiration when we were out walking after our beautiful day in the Tahquitz Falls area. I got very ill, and you were talking about inflammation, which was perfect divine timing. We went and had some food, and then I went home and I just puffed up and I felt horrible, not because of Brenda, but because it was January and my body had too much surplus. I was in a canyon with a lot of pollen and things that I wasn't particularly used to. And I just finished the Christmas holiday where there'd been a lot of, eat, drink, and be merry with my family. And I heard you saying, I'm dealing with inflammation. So this is the other piece, folks. Healing is at hand, meaning if you wonder, like, well, gee, how do I learn how to de-escalate my body from inflammation? Well, that, for me, was a learning path I got on in my 20s, 30s, 40s, because I was very sick. So I learned to steam vegetables, to make a pot of steamed vegetables, to eat less. I read and studied extensively self-healing, self-care. Nowadays, I think it's much more easy because you just go on a YouTube video. You got to be a little careful. Read a few books on cleansing and healing. And what Brenda's saying is you're tapping into your body's innate ability to heal, to thrive, to calm. It's not something we as therapists give you. We help point you towards yourself.
And I ask my clients,
CELF.
Yes, CELF. I ask them, like, so what's your plan for repair and return for this week?
Yeah.
And that's their homework.
It's not like I have this huge wound and I can't heal. It's like, I hear that. Let's just not make it so big you could never do anything about it.
Yeah.
Except have acid reflux.
Yeah.
And antidepressants or whatever. Let's deal with the cause, right?
And I, in hindsight, when I first did my internship at domestic violence, a whole interesting world, of a lot of behavioral, a lot of CBT. And it was just, well, let's talk about how you can take 3 steps of change in your day-to-day life. Because the whole overall atmosphere, the whole landscape was so debilitating, was so multi-generational that it felt futile for the client.
Yes.
And so just giving a sense of do this and then do this.
Yeah.
And now
Plant a
do
garden.
this.
Plant a garden even. I've worked with people who've come out of war-torn areas. Bosnia was one of my early experiences. People who were refugees. I worked with some Ukrainian people. And what I noticed, like Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about a lot in her work, the Faithful Gardener. It's one of my favorite books because she talks about her uncle who comes over from Hungary, I think it was Hungary. And they were like, this was a really bad time, folks. This was like death camps and horrible stuff. In the early 50s, her uncle came over and everything was taken. The land, people were killed in front of them. I've worked with people who've gone through these things, and they always start with getting their hands in the soil. They start with the stories. They weep into the earth. They don't have small problems. They have problems that are so large
That they can't change it
that
themselves.
they must put their hands in the earth, and they must begin again. I've worked with Holocaust survivors. That's how old I am. People who have stamps on their arms, and they don't come in with small issues. In fact, they instruct me because it's not to minimize the things that my clients bring in. It's to talk about resilience and the ability of the body, mind, spirit to heal. Tell the story in the context of we will survive and we will thrive. And when you thrive and survive through your pain and you're not afraid to hold it and you're aware that you're set up to heal, you will naturally share that elixir with others. And that's where the joy is.
The key idea is that becoming aware of your own ability and to know that it's going on whether you're conscious of it or not.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And that you can participate along this vein. You can add, you can jump, you can assist by being aware of just how your body is working for you. And then if you own that, if you know that my body, while I may have severe inflammation, I'm still reproducing my cells. I still have skin covering. My heart is still working.
And I might drink some parsley juice, and my cells will go yum, yum, yum,
yum.
That's so healing and alkaline.
And that, the idea of going in, I am always talking about embodiment and the animistic part of life. That
Can you define animistic?
Well, everything has a soul. That there's a spirit there's a frequency. Everything has a frequency. I mean, that's why we have the periodic table, so that we understand the chemicals.
Fascinating.
And that it used to be more of a spiritual practice, that in eliminating it through the advent of various religions and having religions become expansionary and manifest destiny. And so a lot of the old ways were folded in or went underground into mycelium. That's why I love mycelium, because it holds all of our secrets.
And mycelium, brief definition.
The interconnectedness of the life force under the
fungus,
soil.
The fungal.
It's fungi. It's and the fruit of the fungi would be mushrooms. You can pick mushrooms, but you're not killing the mycelium. It's still underground.
So it's like an underground network of life that's
neural network
that's sending nutrient, information, and healing. To use that word, healing, underneath the repairing and restoring under the ground.
If you look at it, and you take a micro photo of it, it looks like our neural pathways of our body.
Fascinating.
I mean, it's almost identical.
We are a tree.
And the mother tree. I mean,
Yeah.
Suzanne Simard's work, the professor out of UBC, University of British Columbia, in forestry, has identified how the single mother tree actually assigns and assembles resources and sends it out into different parts of the forest. And so it's all vital, and as are we. So that's my. I'm exploring it. I'm looking at the idea of recovery and repair. As Matt Lucada had mentioned, the first step toward any healing is a sense of safety. I find that the people I work with, whether it's coaching or counseling, once they achieve a place of safety that they self-design, that they live it, they know it, whether in their body. Some people only have their body. Some people in safety, it doesn't exist out in the world. But when they have that sense of awareness of safety, it is the first step and of healing. And to me, if we portion it out, just like having ingredients in a soup, we're working toward the ultimate affect of healing, but just trunking it out, like multiple personas, and the idea of how are you going to repair and return this week.
I love that. I love that so much, and it makes so much sense, body, mind, spirit, shadow, that our work is to find that base. It's the base, right? It's the first need of a baby, to feel securely attached. I find that for me, when I don't feel secure, I go out in nature and I sit in a quiet place, even if I have to drive. If I was so anxious I couldn't, I might get a really soft blanket and hum.
My little whistle.
Yeah, you have that whistle. You just create a tone. I learned to do this thing. I think it's called Mankara, where you actually take your fingers and you take the flaps of your ears and you cover the hole in your ears, and then you close your eyes and you go. And in doing that, I create a vibratory space that stops all the noise, and all I can hear is my own humming. It's just such a good one for just restoring me to the now moment. It sounds like a Zen temple inside of me when I'm doing that.
There's a sense of frequency that in the chanting, that allows me to vibrate out, and I connect in ways that are much more satisfying and much more joyful than if I just keep it inside and I have my own space. I like being connected to outside. And so for me, chanting outside, my little whistle, life wave, I think it's called, the frequency that you've just said, where you're activating, because that's a cellular, molecular, and it's going to affect the biochemistry. I mean, part of my postdoc work was working in biochemistry and what activities, such as what you referred to earlier, doing the mind mapping with the meditation, and knowing that it dumps oxytocin within a very short time, like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'm already feeling the effect of just doing Mankara. I feel very relaxed. I just gave myself a little holiday.
Yeah, I like that holiday.
Yeah. It feels good. It didn't cost anything.
Yeah.
That's a fun tool to have. So I think this, as we look at the idea of repair, as we're revisiting that, it's like you're pairing something, with something else. And so you're pairing consciousness of my skin cells, my blood cells, the things that Deepak Chopra talked about way back in the 90s, magical mind, magical body. It's on YouTube. He talked about, be aware of the miracle of every cell of your body is right now healing you, replicating, taking away toxins. You are creating, or biology of belief, Bruce Lipton. Yeah. What you're doing right now is called epigenetics. The things that you choose, it's not your just genetic code. You're actively acting with the present, current, now moment to bring about healing if you wish.
To me, it's the first beginning of embodiment.
I love it.
And the vision that I was given was a long hallway, dark hallway, but toward the middle of it, there's this ajar door, and this golden light is emanating, calling me, beckoning me. So I go down this hallway. I not timidly, but very cautiously open, and there is this giant vibrating sun, but I see that it is one cell. And then I actually watch it starting to divide, and it's very reminiscent of seeing a cell divide into two. But right before they break away, the two sides of the, like a Venn diagram, the two circles are together, and right at that junction, right before they divide, I look down, and all the way down like an elevator, and both of these circles is a circle beyond a circle beyond a circle beyond a circle beyond a circle beyond, and it goes all the way. And I realize these are little tubes of discovery, and this is my breath, this is my blood, this is my history, this is my future, and everything is contained, and it's all vibrating. And so I enter into that, and I just feel this warmth and this pulsation. And I realize that this is my life force. And from here, I can create, I can digest, I can write, I can paint, I can move in through my day. And I stay in that space. And even as I drive on the freeway, or if I'm sitting in a conference, or if I'm giving a lecture, or sitting in sacred space in a client, this new vision of the cellular divide going all the way down this chamber, that connects me to where my eyesight in this room, all the way back down into past the earth crust, into down below, beyond the planet. It just creates for me this place of safety. And so I feel that I'm ready to face and hold and work and move forward from this beautiful place of containment.
Beautiful. It sounds like you're really utilizing active imagination as well, which is a holographic field that connects you to these very beautiful inner workings of not just yourself, CELF, but the universe.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Brenda. Thank you so much for sharing this today. I think
pleasure.
it's deeply nurturing.
Thanks for asking.
All right.
Thanks,
Until
Deborah.
we meet again.
Bye.
Bye.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Soul Path Sessions podcast with Deborah Meints-Pierson and Brenda Littleton. If you'd like to hear more about living a more soulful life, please subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast app, and be sure to check out the show notes and links below. For more information from Deborah, visit soulpathsessions.com, and for Brenda, brendalittleton.com. Thank you for listening, and remember to follow your soul. It knows the way.